Chapter 26. Jack didn't plan on falling asleep. Too much was happening, and happening much too fast when it did. Still, he hadn't slept in a while. What with finding the Black Forest, riding on the wolf's back, and breaking the mirror. After all that, the quiet comfort of the cottage was just too hard to resist. Jack propped himself up against the wall with some bed pillows, then leaned back to settle in. On his right, May was doing the same, only she already closed her eyes. Jack smiled slightly as he marveled for the 100th time that her hair could really be blue like that. How had she done that? Was there magic involved? And then Jack opened his eyes, not exactly sure when he'd closed them. When he fell asleep, his mind always seemed to wander to the oddest places. Places where magic didn't work, and where there wasn't any royalty. Places where anyone was equal. No one was better than anyone else just because of who their parents were. That'd be nice. A place like that. That'd be some kind of dream world. And maybe it looked something like the place Jack saw when he opened his eyes. Somehow surrounding him on all sides was a wide field with tall, golden grasses blowing gently in multiple directions from the slightly chilly wind. The meadow seemed empty, at least from where he was sitting. As he turned to take it all in, though, he noticed an oak tree behind him. In fact, he was leaning against it. How odd! Had it been there a minute ago? Hadn't he just been in the sunlight, whereas now he sat in the tree's shade? Jack thought so, but he didn't really put too much effort into worrying about it. The tree was here now. That was the important thing. He snuggled against the tree's trunk, sighing with contentment. His back fit into the wood just right. The gentle breeze still managed to find him under the tree's canopy, and the air blew his hair almost playfully. Jack smiled. This was actually really nice. It is quite nice, said a man at his side. A man who Jack could have sworn wasn't there a minute ago. A man whose voice was familiar. A man who was also dressed entirely in black armor, covered by a blue cloak. Somewhere deep in Jack's head, a small voice cried out that this was the Wicked Queen's eye, that Jack was in danger, but the voice was too small to listen to. So Jack just ignored it and smiled. I agree. It is nice, he said. For some reason, his voice sounded dazed, even to him, but Jack didn't let that bother him. The night returned Jack's smile. Sometimes I sit here for days, you know, the man said, leaning his head back against the tree. It's very peaceful. Also, I must admit, it's quite pleasant to think, to hear your breath moving in and out without distractions of the outside world. Jack nodded in agreement. I haven't had much chance to sit still for a few days, he said. It's been pretty strange. The knight leaned over. It's going to get stranger, he whispered. At that, the knight waved his hand, and an image appeared in midair. It was of a girl with both blonde and blue hair, checking to make sure the boy next to her was asleep before standing up and removing a chain from around her neck. You're in for quite an adventure, actually, the knight said to him as Jack dreamily watched the scene unfold in midair. You really have no idea how deep you'll be going. Well, Jack said thoughtfully, we are going to rescue Snow White. That much I know. The knight's eyes twinkled. Are you now, Jack? That would be a grand adventure, and certainly a worthy one. In the image, the girl snuck quietly over to a nearby wall upon which hung a mirror. A thought occurred to Jack, one that seemed to penetrate the fog currently filling his mind. But the eyes serve the wicked queen, the knight sighed, and leaned back against the tree. I think that you will find that much of what you previously believed, young Jack, may not be as true as you thought. That answer didn't seem to help at all. But you do serve the wicked queen, right? The knight paused as if trying to word his answer carefully. I served the queen in the past, yes, he said finally. However, unlike many in my order, I pledged my allegiance to another. My allegiance and more. More? Jack said, looking closely at the knight next to him. He realized with a start, though a gentle one, that the knight wasn't wearing his hood, as he had been in the giant's mouth. The hood had been hiding a rather pleasant face, wrinkled with worry lines, but also quite a few lines from wide smiles. The knight's hair was almost a bronzed brown, a color that accented his green eyes. For some reason, the man's face looked familiar, as if Jack had seen him in paintings or something. And then the realization of the knight's identity suddenly hit him, almost as if the knowledge had come from somewhere else, somewhere outside Jack's head. Wait a second, Jack said slowly. You're the one who... I was, the knight corrected, his eyes twinkling again, though there was also a hint of sadness. But now all I am is a shadow of my former self, a hint of what was. Or for some, the knight said, a small grin sneaking into his lips. A hint of what might come? At that moment, the girl in the image slowly held the end of her chain up to a small space at the top of the mirror, then pushed it into place. An ear-splitting scream filled the air, and the floating image began pulling at Jack, yanking him bodily into it and away from the field, the sunshine, and the night, straight back into his waking body at the cottage. The scream had come from a tall, thin woman who now stood in the doorway, wearing a vibrant blue dress, full platinum-colored hair framing her long face. Philip stood behind her, and both he and the woman looked completely shocked. The woman's mouth was still hanging open from her scream. Across the room, the wolf was also awake and glancing around with the same confusion that Jack felt. With a sinking feeling, Jack quickly looked over to the wall, over the mirror. And there was May, having placed the crown of her necklace into the mirror's frame. "Princess!" Philip screamed. "You must not do that!" the woman in blue shouted. "May, don't!" Jack said, but he was far too late. May smiled guiltily. "I know I wasn't supposed to, but you got to understand. I need to know if it will work. I need to know." With that, she stepped away from the mirror, bracing herself for what might happen, as they all did. Except nothing did happen. And after a few more seconds of nothing, Jack, Philip, and May all breathed a collective sigh of relief. Philip reached May first, as Jack was farther away, but Jack wasn't far behind. "What were you thinking, Princess?" Philip asked her. "May," Jack said, pushing Philip aside, "you have no idea what might have happened with the mirror broken like that. We don't even know what it would have done if it was still in one piece." I needed to know," May said, sounding almost confused. "I had to see what would happen. It might have been able to give us one last piece of information, even if it was broken." As she spoke, her eyes began to moisten. "Don't you guys get it?" she said. "How are we supposed to find her without this? We needed the mirror. It can't be broken. I won't accept that." Jack and Philip both reached out to touch her, but she jerked away from them and strode back over to the mirror. She stared at it in despair for a moment, then reached up to take the necklace back. "The damage has been done," the woman in blue said from behind them, her voice sad, as if in response to her words. A small glow appeared behind the crack in the center of the mirror. Slowly, the glow grew in intensity, filling the mirror, shining forth at odd angles from every fracture in the glass. Then an even stranger thing began to happen. The glow, the actual light in the mirror, began to trickle out of the hole in the middle of the mirror, just like smoke rising out of a chimney.